Got the no quarterback blues. We're afraid that we're going to lose against the Pittsburgh Steelers. When we're going to get a quarterback? It's happening again, Joel. No quarterback blues. Again. It's happening again to us, man. We got the blues. The no quarterback blues.
That's Elliot with the no quarterback blues bringing us into the show today. And why do we have the no quarterback blues? We have the no quarterback blues because, in case you're living under a rock or abducted by aliens, Deshaun Watson has been placed on season-ending IR with a shoulder injury that I don't understand. Elliot, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I do. I think injuries are part of the game. I would like to point out that on this show, we have lectured the Browns over and over again that they really need to have 3 quarterbacks on the active roster in order to survive the season. They did have 3 quarterbacks, and it would have been even a good idea to sign a 4th quarterback to the practice squad, which, by the way, we published, or I published, I should say, with guidance from you on October the 29th, 2023. What happens if we get another injury? Because we knew that Deshaun Watson was not completely healthy. And so it just made perfect sense that we should have been looking for another quarterback on the practice squad. We've got 16 spots on the practice squad. It doesn't take that much. It's not that huge of a sacrifice in order to identify a spot there. It's really kind of a brainless decision to at least hire somebody that you can train in the rudiments of the offense. The Browns, like other teams in the NFL, need to try to be a quarterback factory and have quarterbacks available that are trained in the rudiments of the Browns offense, and they didn't do it. Now, suddenly, we're down to 2 quarterbacks, and there is no practice squad quarterback to promote to become the number 3 quarterback. So,
Go ahead, Elliot.
Well, I mean, the injury is something that is not nothing can be done about the injuries, but you could have prepared for it a little better by at least getting a contingency plan in place should there be an injury to Deshaun Watson. I mean, the guy's had 2 ACL surgeries in his career, and we knew that his shoulder was bothering him. It might not have been something as dramatic as a broken bone in his shoulder, but it was very foreseeable that he might miss time. And they needed to have another quarterback. We just went through this with San Francisco last season in the playoffs. They missed a trip to the Super Bowl because they had no emergency number 4 quarterback. Otherwise, they might have won that game, might have gone to the Super Bowl instead of Philadelphia. But no, they didn't have a number 4 quarterback, and they were just stuck. They just had no offense, and it was a sham of a game. Philadelphia went instead of them. What does it take to learn this lesson? You need to prepare for injuries in advance. Quarterback is the most important position. You can win ugly games if you have a very good defense. You don't need to be throwing the ball all over the ball yard, and you can still win. Pittsburgh Steelers are a case in point. They don't have a super fantastic quarterback. They've been outgained in every game that they've played, and they still have a winning record.
Yeah, that's kind of what part of the Browns have been. I was trying to look up free agent quarterbacks, but let's focus on Deshaun Watson for a second. So apparently he suffered this injury in the second quarter, and apparently this injury is supposed to be super painful, blah, blah, blah. And he comes out in the second half and goes 14 for 14 and leads the Browns to a victory. So I want to give credit where credit is due to Deshaun Watson. I mean, he came out, he played, he balled out. So the last thing I want to hear from anybody ever again is this lazy, not going to cuss, lazy rear end take that we hear all the freaking time. All the elephant time we're listening to. Deshaun Watson's got to get back to some kind of form that he had in Houston crap. Okay. I don't want to hear it anymore. When I was 28, I wasn't working to get back to look like what I did when I was 24. I was trying to play football at 28. I mean, didn't play football at 28, but I was trying to live my life at 28. Deshaun Watson has come out and proved against the Tennessee Titans, against the Baltimore Ravens, that he is on target, healthy, can play, and can beat you as a quarterback. Period. So the narrative that Deshaun Watson has to go out and shake off the rust and get back to some Houston form is just crap. It's lazy. It's lazy right up there with the lazy takes of here's how many quarterbacks the Browns have had since 2000, from whenever the last time I was rational. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. Deshaun Watson is your franchise quarterback, and the fact that he's hurt is devastating to this season. With Deshaun Watson healthy, playing as Deshaun Watson plays, this team legitimately had a chance to win the Super Bowl. Now we're screwed.
Well, let me push back on you on that. Teams have won the Super Bowl with backup quarterbacks before.
Yes, they have.
This has happened. Did Jeff Hostetler win the Super Bowl for the New York Giants? I think he did. I pointed out that the San Francisco 49ers might well have done it with a rookie, the number 7 draft pick, Brock Purdy, last season, but they didn't have a replacement for him last year in the playoffs because they didn't think it was necessary. And if they could have had just anybody, stand in for him, hand the ball off, they could have probably, or at least possibly, competed with Philadelphia and won that game and gone to the Super Bowl and gotten somebody healthy. And it doesn't matter who they could have had. Anybody probably would have had a puncher's chance to lead the 49ers to a victory if they could have just gotten to the Super Bowl because they're that talented at the other positions. Quarterback being the most important position in football, but not the only position in football. Sometimes I think we lose sight of that fact. So I don't think that the Browns offense is really all that good, frankly. I think that the team is led by Myles Garrett, and the defense has consistently played at a championship level. That's why the Browns are in contention, is because the defense has been the best unit on the field in every game that they've played. And the offense, frankly, has given away points, pick sixes and fumbles and just 3 and outs. And that's why the Browns have less than a perfect record. Otherwise, they'd be the number 1 team in football.
Well, I'm going to agree with most of what you just said. The Browns are a defensive football team at this point, and they need to embrace that identity. Okay. The part I'm going to disagree with is the Deshaun Watson that played against Tennessee and the Deshaun Watson that played against Baltimore. To me, that's Deshaun Watson. You put Deshaun Watson with that defense, okay, that is a team that can play and win the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
It's a very credible combination.
They can make that happen. Now you're looking back at okay, now that our offense has basically just gone to mush because what we had just hasn't materialized one way, for one reason or another. Deshaun Watson's been hurt. Now we're looking at, okay, well, the Steelers won the Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback. And, Tom Brady, I don't think he was a rookie, but it was his first year starting, He
was a second-year player.
First year starting.
He wasn't really that fantastic, to be honest with you. If you think back, he wasn't that great as a second-year player, but he did the job. And lo and behold, they won the Super Bowl with the second-year player, and wasn't that a cute story? But
so it wasn't to me. There's a difference between having a franchise quarterback that can go 14 for 14 and lead your team to a victory in the second half, keep the offense on the field, moving the ball, and a rookie in there trying not to make mistakes and do something dumb to lose you a game. Well, there's a complete difference in those two scenarios.
But it's not a complete difference because Deshaun started the game off by doing something. I won't say that it's dumb, but he had something bad happen to him. He did throw a complete 6 to start things off, and so he wasn't mistake-free.
Well, right. Well, you throw the ball over a guy who's 6'4" to start with, who has amazing leaping ability. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I know who Kyle Hamilton is. I've watched him do this for years
Oh,
at Notre
man.
Dame. Okay, you're not throwing that ball over his head. You're just not. So he should have just grounded it or held on to it. But
Yeah,
he thought
Kyle
he could throw
Hamilton
it.
is.
Had he actually gotten that over Kyle Hamilton's hands, that ball is going out of bounds. It's going nowhere near, David
Yeah.
Njoku.
Okay.
So
Anyway, let me ask this question.
Deshaun Watson doesn't have to play perfect. He just
What
has to
if-
play Deshaun Watson football.
What if the Browns offensive staff in August of 2023 was right? What if Dorian Thompson-Robinson is at least as good as Joshua Dobbs, and Joshua Dobbs is a winning NFL quarterback? What if they're right?
Well, we're going to find that out.
Yeah, well, it's not ridiculous. It does not violate any laws of physics that the Browns coaching staff might have made that correct judgment. And if that's the case, then they have a puncher's chance to have a winning football team. They can make playoffs. Who knows what can happen? I don't know what's going to happen.
Before we get too far into this, Elliot, let's take our break and come back and let's talk about the Browns quarterback room. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
All right, guys, on the other side of the break, guys, gals, children, ladies and gentlemen, whoever's listening to the show, thank you for listening. After the break, we will get into where do the Browns go from here? What does the offense look like? And what does the quarterback room look like? So hang on after the break. And we're back. Elliot, you were bringing up an interesting question about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And just a little bit of background for those of you out there. No more than Deshaun Watson was announced to be put on the disabled list or injured reserve. Excuse me, I'm using baseball terms. The season-ending injured reserve.
Same thing.
Kevin Stefanski comes out and says, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be our quarterback, which I think is the right move. We don't have to get into that.
Agreed.
But, Elliot, you had an interesting question, so let's go back to your question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, they might have, in my opinion, they might have panicked a little bit when he had a bad game against Baltimore, because a lot of quarterbacks have bad games against Baltimore, and they felt that they needed to bring in the veteran to take his place. After one game, they benched DTR and said, okay, PJ Walker, you're up, you're our man, and PJ has not played well. Now they managed to win. And, some people interpret that as, oh, okay, look, PJ's got this mystique and he's led the offense and that's why they're winning, because he's the quarterback. And no, the reason why they are winning games, the same reason why Pittsburgh Steelers win games with a lousy offense, is because great defenses allow you to win ugly football games. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the Browns can win with PJ Walker, or, and they can win with, a lot of mistakes on offense and get away with it. But I still think that it's very possible that they made the correct judgment on DTR. And the reason why I think so is that if you look back on his career, he has all of the hallmarks of a guy who should be able to transition quickly into the NFL. Now, there's a lot of, people that wanted guys to transition
let me jump in.
After 1 year of college ball and stuff like that.
Let me jump in here real quick. I want to address something before you move on to the next part of this. The decision to not go with Dorian Thompson-Robinson as opposed to PJ Walker. Let's revisit that, right?
Yes.
Deshaun Watson practices the whole week, takes all the first starting reps.
Yes.
Right. DTR maybe takes the second reps, which aren't much. This is the NFL, right? So he's really not ready to play the game. Watson goes down. Stefanski's upset because he knows his game plan is screwed because he devised a game plan for Deshaun Watson. And now you have DTR who hasn't practiced. You don't have a game plan for him, and you're throwing him in there to the fire, which is really an unfair situation for DTR, especially given it's the fourth game of the season, and he does need to figure out how to be a professional quarterback. So that's why you go to PJ Walker, because you think, okay, PJ Walker's the veteran. He can come in. He understands football. He understands the NFL, can run through a few weeks until Deshaun Watson returns. Okay, that's the key. You just want your backup to keep the team afloat until the guy returns. Move ahead to this situation. Watson's not coming back. That's it, baby. He's gone. So we can cry all we want about it, but he's not coming back. So now the situation is we have Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This is his 11th week in the NFL. It's time for him to take the reins. It's time for him to
Yes.
show why we drafted him and why we stuck with him. You're going to create a game plan for him. You're going to give him an opportunity to be successful. I promise you the Browns are going to run the football, and they're going to run the football, run safe passes, maybe take some deep shots, but this is
Yes.
going to look like trestle ball, and it's going to look exactly what Pittsburgh did with Roethlisberger when he was a rookie. It's going to look exactly what New England did with Brady when he was in the second year. You're going to run, throw play action passes, and let
Yes.
your defense win the football game. But anyway, I digress.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say was that there are guys like Trey Lance and Zach Wilson that for whatever reason the draft community had these fantasies that they would be able to go to the NFL, play immediately.
Yeah, that's a fantasy
with very little college experience. But DTR had 5 years of college experience because remember he played in the COVID era.
Yep.
And he had 5 years of starting experience, did very, very well, graduated from college. And, if you remember the Bill Parcells criteria about what he wants from a starting quarterback, he filled every criteria set up by Bill Parcells. He has much better preparation in college than any of these whiz kid guys that only had like a year and a half of actual college ball before they were thrown to the wolves in the NFL. So I think there's a very good chance that DTR is much better prepared than some of these other quarterbacks that just really had inadequate preparation. That's the word I'm looking for. That's not DTR. DTR is not inadequately prepared. He has had plenty of preparation. He's a year older than the average quarterback that comes out because he was in college a year longer with an extra year of eligibility.
With a former professional football coach, NFL coach.
Yes. And they say that, well, you can't run that stuff in the NFL. Well, they did run it in the NFL, and they actually won football games with it, if you recall, with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, Chip Kelly just kind of got in his own way.
Yeah, well, that's true too. He had some, how should we say, rough edges to his personality. That
yes, he got in his own way.
Yeah.
So I think the Browns are going to have to look a lot more, and I hate to say it this way, but it's what it is. They're going to have to look a lot more like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, where you're running the football, you're being safe, you're not doing anything stupid, and you're letting your defense take control of the game.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. You're not going to do as many things as Deshaun Watson. It's not going to be just like having Deshaun Watson. It's not going to be as good as Deshaun Watson, but that doesn't mean that you can't win. And a perfect example of that is the Steelers. We thought at the beginning of the season, you and I, that the Pittsburgh Steelers had an excellent chance to steal away with the, pardon the pun, with the division because they had one of the best defenses. We thought all along that the Browns and the Steelers had the best defenses, and all the talk was about Cincinnati and Baltimore because they had all these great wide receiving threats, and they do, but
Cincinnati does.
Well, Baltimore has personnel that were hired to catch long distance passes. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
We think that there's a mismatch there, Joel and I do, that maybe that's not the best match to the skills of their quarterback. Nevertheless,
Absolutely.
Nevertheless, the buzz was there that, oh my gosh, look out for the Ravens this year. They're going to be an offensive juggernaut. Well, it may not actually be that way. They both Cincinnati and Baltimore, excuse me.
They kind of abandoned that plan after week 3.
Yeah,
Baltimore
but it's too late because they let both of them lost guys from their defensive secondary, and they weren't quite as tough on defense as they were last year, in my opinion. And
I agree.
That hurts them a little bit. But Pittsburgh is every bit as difficult on defense as they've ever been. And what about Cleveland? Cleveland is very tough on defense, a lot of the points that the Browns have given up have actually been scored by the Browns offense, pick
Mm-hmm.
sixes and fumbles and the like. But the Browns defense has given up very few points this season. And I think that those ugly victories, so called, in other words, wins that occur because of the defense triumphing over the other team, even though the offense doesn't perform at a high level. We call
Mm-hmm.
that ugly football. I think it's actually quite beautiful myself. I'm a child of the 1970s. I grew up with that kind of stuff. I like it. And there's no shame in it. And I think it's very possible that the Browns could learn to live with it if I'm hoping that the coach can adapt and be okay with playing defensive football and not having an anxiety attack if we don't score 30 points every game. Of course, we have been scoring 30 points for the
Well,
past.
I mean, I'll say this. This is what two teams in the AFC North have done, right? They play defense and run the football in the Steelers and the Ravens, and those two teams have dominated this division for a long time. Okay, Bengals have come out with their "let's throw it all over the yard," and they've done pretty good with it. But I mean, once you give up on your defense, the question is, which I think the Bengals have given up on their defense. I mean, once you put your defense in a hole, can you still outscore your opponents? And the Bengals have come on because Burrow has come on, but they just lost to the Texans because they couldn't hold them. They couldn't stop them.
There you go.
See, and that's what you're trying not to be in this division, because if you're going to go out there and try to outscore your opponents facing number one, number two in defense in the league, you're not going to win those games. Because all you have to do is play enough on offense to score to be adequate. And that's all you need DTR to be, is adequate. And you've got to give them at least 3-4 games. And if the Browns can come out of this 4-4, they're still making the playoffs.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Is that the Browns are in an excellent playoff position if they can somehow win a few games. And we can say the same thing about the Steelers, is that they are also in the playoff hunt, despite the fact that the Steelers have been outgained by their opponents in every single game that they've played this season. That's kind of unbelievable, but it's true. They have been, let's say that again. You heard it here. It's been said through the media and other places, but the Steelers have been outgained by their opponents in every game that they've played, but they have still managed to come up with a winning record.
Well, that's what happens when you have a defense that gets turnovers, puts your offense in a good position to score. So it's a whole mentality. The also thing that's going to have to set up here is that the special teams are going to have to step up and help you win a football game. Last week, they tried to help you lose a football game.
That's right.
Moving forward, special teams have to win you football games. Now, I'm not saying that in terms of the kickers. I'm talking about punt returner Prochet, who, I don't know, just drops the ball. I mean, by the way, whatever happened to that rule we got to give a player a yard to catch the football? That's never been enforced. I mean, somebody ought to enforce this at some point. But anyway, I digress again.
Yeah, I question what happened on that play. I didn't understand that. Somebody has to explain that rule to me, but it looked like the guy crowded him within an inch of his life. But
well, that's been going on in the league for a long time, and nobody's calling it.
Did he call for a fair catch on that play?
He did call for a fair catch. And what happens when you call for a fair catch, the opponents will often, I mean, the Browns do it to people. You run up right in their face and try to scream and yell at them to get them to drop the ball. So my understanding was that you had a yard. You have to give them a yard of space to catch the football. You've asked for a fair catch. That rule has not been enforced since I can remember ever watching football. Ever. So
yeah. It was a masterful job. I mean, it looked like the guy was going to clean his clock completely. So, the guy, Prochet looked at the guy that was about to hit him, so it seemed, and took his eye off the ball, and that was that.
Yeah, so the defense is going to have some help from special teams. The offense is going to have to help. And then the way the offense helps is you've just got to use clock. You've got to keep the defense off the field. A successful drive can be 4 first downs and a punt. That can be a successful drive.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because you've taken 4 minutes off the clock. right? 4 or 5 minutes off the clock. You may not have gotten points. Maybe you got 3 points. Okay. But if the defense then can give you the ball inside the red zone, then you get 3 first downs. That's a touchdown, right? And if you get, situations where you can capitalize on the other team's mistakes, there you go. All you need is the offense to be serviceable. Get first downs, run the clock, keep the defense off the field. So when they come on the field, they can play lights out, give you the ball back, and move on. I want to add one other thing about Kevin Stefanski. Have you noticed that he calls the game differently and that he deals with referees differently? And that I think Jim Schwartz has been a very good influence on Kevin Stefanski. I think Stefanski sees the game a little bit differently now that he's got Schwartz in his ear.
How so?
I think he sees it more aggressively. Okay, I mean, Stefanski, in my opinion, has always been an aggressive player, aggressive coach, aggressive play caller. But I think he sees the game in terms of not necessarily being an intelligent, technical coach calling the right technical plays. Now he's willing to line them up and say, you just have at it, and our attitude is going to be better than your attitude, and that's how we're going to win the football game. He's never really been a coach that's instilled attitude into an offense. But I think you can see it in the Browns offense this year.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, my main concern about Stefanski has been that he needs to be willing to let the opponent try to beat us with their offense. And one of the examples was that we had the opportunity to punt the ball and then have them try to score on a long drive rather than we have to put the ball in the air and try to end the game with the ball in the hands of our offense. That's tough, I think, for an offensive coach to digest. And we talked about that play where everybody's saying, oh, well, you should give the ball to Kareem Hunt, and that would be a first down. Well, I don't think it would be a first down. I think it would be a punt. I don't think.
Which play are you talking about?
I forget. It was a game that a game against Seattle where we lost in the last minute. And
okay.
And Stefanski called a pass, and everybody said, you stupid idiot, you never call a pass in that play. You always give the ball to Kareem Hunt, and he always gets 3 yards. And no, he doesn't, because they're looking for him, and they would stop him.
Right. But analytics will tell you.
What I would say is that, yeah, okay, but you punt the ball, and you play defense, and everybody would complain, you stupid idiot, you can't give the ball to Hunt because he never makes 3 yards in that situation. But I think that it is okay to go on defense and try to prevent a long touchdown or a long actually field goal drive. You have to just hold them, behind the your own 40-yard line. And that is something that you would have to depend on your defense. You have to have a lot of confidence in your defense in order to go down that road.
Well, it'll be certainly something to watch with Stefanski. How does he adapt his style of play to having to own the idea that this is a defensive game and you need to be defensive to win the game? Meaning you can't take all these crazy risks. That risks are actually adverse to you winning because you don't have the personnel on the offense to do this. You now have to have your defense take care of it, which means you have to play safe football, which is literally what the Ravens do, what the Steelers do. They play safe offensive football. I mean, the Ravens, they gave up on the air raid 2 games into the season. So, I mean, that was the riskiest offense in the history of NFL offenses. And they quit that crap pretty early. So, any parting final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Sign Garrett Gilbert.
I don't even see him on the free agent list.
I think he's a free agent.
He probably is, but I don't see him on the list. I see Matt Ryan would be interesting.
You're not going to sign Matt Ryan. You're not going to sign Joe Flacco, but you could sign Garrett Gilbert. You could sign Garrett Gilbert, and Garrett knows the offense.
Find the GOAT. Trace McSorley.
You're not going to get the GOAT, but you might get Garrett Gilbert, and he could
I'm
learn
saying
very quickly.
Garrett Gilbert's the GOAT, baby. What was that league? He was the dominant player for the Orlando Apollos.
The Alliance of Awful Football.
Yeah, he was the GOAT, baby. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking us out this week. Come back next week when we talk about, hopefully, a Browns win over the Squealers.
All right.
Later.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Browniacs. Please like and follow us on Spotify and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Go Browns!